Philharmonic 2 has two different envelopes, and the first one is used to shape the amplitude of a note over its duration, and the second one can be used to modulate either the filter or the pitch. Now let's start by playing a little solo cello line here, and this is it with the default settings. So we have a nice sharp attack on each note. Now I can slow down the attack so that it takes, in this case, let's say 17.8 milliseconds until the amplitude of the note on reaches full volume. So we'll hear a kind of softer attack on each note. I like that they have this set to a very playable range. Up near the top gives a nice soft attack. And we can further modify the decay, the sustain, and the release. We can get different kind of truncated sounds to the notes if we want to cut off the sustain portion of the sound. So all kind of interesting effects are possible, and we use this to dial up the amount that we want it to affect the volume. So this can also act as a kind of volume control as it comes after all of this processing before it's fed into the effects section. So let me go back and just reload this to bring it back into the default state that it's in. And this is the mezzo forte sample over here. And now back to the defaults. Now the second envelope we can use, according to these dials, to modulate the filter and or the pitch. So let's start by looking at the filter. I'll dial this down. So you can get some interesting creative effects that way, and I'll snap it back to the beginning. And similarly for pitch. And this can be interesting in subtle amounts. We can have it scoop up to a note, but we need to use very subtle amounts, and the shift key will give you fine increments. So less than 1. We hear a slight pitch transition into the note, which brings us to our next section, the key strip over here. Again, let me just go back and reload this into its default state. And here we can determine not only if we want to have a monophonic or polyphonic mode, but also some portamento, which is a glide or a pitch transition between notes. So we can choose here with polyphonic mode, which means multiple notes can be played simultaneously. Monophonic mode, which means only one note will sound at a time. Or the two legato modes, and this is where it gets interesting. We can use these to establish a pitch transition between the notes. And this controls the amount of time. And the curve of the transition. And a very short portamento could sound kind of interesting. Even shorter than that could be pretty natural. And legato 2 is a different mode where it reacts differently. I'd suggest playing with the same settings here and switching between legato 2 and legato 1 to get a sense of the feel of it, but I can describe it best as saying it happens a little more quickly here and it's a little more natural sounding. And here's the same thing in legato 1. So the time is quicker, but it's more of a natural transition. And that's it. Now I'm going to end off here, and in the next, our last video, we're going to look at the macro controls and how to use MIDI control and a couple of tips and ideas on how to get the most out of Miroslav Philharmonic 2.